Fallout 4's Commonwealth is utterly packed with different factions and various decisions you'll have to make for each throughout your playthrough. But the biggest of these relates to which main ending you'd like to obtain, which factions you want to remain standing, and which deserve to get utterly obliterated. In this video, we're looking at Fallout 4's 4 main endings, one for each faction, as well as the smaller variations within, seeing how the rest of the wasteland reacts to each decision in order to ultimately determine which is best, as well as which is probably canon after the events of the Amazon TV show. So stock up on those stim packs and let's get to it. Down at the bottom, the Railroad may be an organization dedicated to rescuing enslaved synths and granting them a new life, though the means by which they become the powerhouse of the Commonwealth is without a doubt one of the most bloody conflicts possible. There's only one path really through which to beat the game with the Railroad's help directly, and for the most part, it actually involves just following through the Institute questline, all the while secretly serving as an underground Railroad agent through the quest Underground Undercover, liaising with rebel synths inside the Institute, providing them with weapons in preparation for staging a coup, which is ultimately the endgame here. Should we become hostile with the Institute at any point, we lose our status as undercover agents, triggering the Railroad quest Burning Cover, which doesn't lose them as an ally, but does make it impossible to complete their ending. So in order to do this one, we need to remain friendly with the Institute, right up to the final quest, the Nuclear Option. However, what this ultimately means is that we will have to betray the Brotherhood of Steel a fair while beforehand, during the first point of no return, where we have to choose between the quests Mass Fusion and Spoils of War, doing the former to acquire the beryllium agitator from the Mass Fusion building in order to aid with the Institute's power needs. Power which in this case we're blowing up later, but even still, siding with the Institute for this makes us permanent enemies to the Brotherhood of Steel. And when the Institute procure a device the Brotherhood desperately needed to power up Liberty Prime, what's the first thing the Brotherhood then do? Yes, attack the Railroad, obviously. Duh. I mean, they may not be able to get at the organization creating the synths, so you can bet they'll settle for the one liberating them. This of course only escalates our conflict with the Brotherhood, resulting in all-out war through the Railroad's tunnels and the deaths of several named NPCs on both sides. With us, of course, ensuring victory for the Railroad though, this leads Desdemona to only one viable conclusion. With the Institute still a major looming threat in the Commonwealth, and there being very few factions with the power to take them down and liberate the synths, the best thing we can do right away is strike at the heart of the main faction with the best chance of defeating the Institute. And okay, granted, the Brotherhood did just try to annihilate the Railroad, but this whole path to victory just feels kind of messy, yet works out way too conveniently. With a cobbled together plan then, we head to the Brotherhood's precinct base, commandeer a vertibird, sneak up to a point onto the Pridwen, mount some bombs, sneak off again, and detonate. Side note, whilst you can safely jump from the Pridwen in power armor usually, you can't for this quest. You have to leave again via the vertibirds, which is a shame because leaping from an exploding airship in stolen power armor would have been awesome. But just like that, the majorly powerful Brotherhood, but apparently just minorly inconvenient faction to the Railroad, loses its grip in the Commonwealth. So much for the enemy of my enemy is my friend. In this case, it seems despite our common goal of killing the Institute, the Brotherhood and Railroad simply had to annihilate one another first, all the whilst Father laughs at them from deep underground. It does make sense, their ideals are polar opposites. The Brotherhood want to destroy anything not purely human, whilst the Railroad wants to save the oppressed and ostracized. You'd think they wouldn't squabble until after the big bad boogeyman of the Commonwealth is dealt with. Still, fair play to the Railroad for not being bullied by the tough guys in power armor, and even fairer play for then successfully pulling off the destruction of the Institute. A plan which did have a fair bit more prep work go into it, and realistically has more right to succeed than the last-minute slap-together Brotherhood one. And I suppose there's more of a poeticism to this method of destroying the Institute than the more heavy-handed assaults like the Brotherhood, turning the Institute's own synths against them, because in creating something so perfectly able to emulate human behavior, the Institute failed to account for the fact that such beings may just want to lead lives of their own. I guess it does bring up the question as to the level of sentience these machines have compared to regular humans. A question which can be answered far better by the movie Blade Runner than, I guess, me. Once we teleport the other Railroad members inside though, the quest follows pretty much the same dungeon crawl as it would with the Brotherhood or Minutemen, fighting through a less well-maintained portion of the Institute to access the main area, finally reaching Sean's terminal to lift the lockdown, issuing the evacuation notice, and if we can convince our son to cooperate, shut down some of the synths too, before rigging a bomb to the Institute's fusion reactor, teleporting out, possibly with a synth copy of Child Sean, a callback to our original goal, then blasting a brand new crater in the middle of Boston. An ending which is more or less the same for the other factions, save the Institute, of course. Though, for the Railroad, this is far from the end of their purpose in the Commonwealth, and with all the synths now liberated from their place of origin, the next job is to continue the work of getting them to safety, further afield where the prejudice and distrust found in the Commonwealth doesn't quite reach. As far as the reactions of our companions go, it's pretty positive across the board, at least for the ones left standing. The likes of Piper and Nick Valentine are simply pleased that the Institute's gone. They give the same response for any of the endings, though speaking to Piper just after destroying the Brotherhood, she accepts that was necessary in our case, but does there mourn all the lives lost. For the most part, it's the Railroad leaders who have things to say for this ending, given they've, well, killed almost everyone else from the factions. Desdemona explains the job of securing more locations, whilst Deacon tells us we're made of solid gold for doing what we did. And if you are gonna choose this ending, then bear in mind X688 will be lost as a companion after destroying the Institute, and even if you spare Paladin Dance during the Brotherhood questline, he will no longer be a companion after destroying the Brotherhood, despite, you know, the fact that they would have destroyed him. So you'll want to max your affinity with both of these before betraying their respective factions if you want their affinity perks. Overall though, the Railroad ending turns out good for much of the Commonwealth, though especially those more ostracized by the core societies. So why then am I arguing it to be the worst ending? Well, it mostly comes down to the fact that we can achieve very similar results on the same degree of our moral compass without the need for so much bloodshed. We can, in another ending that we'll get to, ensure the Railroad get exactly what they want without having to destroy the Brotherhood. The sticking point, which really is my main gripe with the Railroad ending, managing to pull together such a jammy last-minute plan and inflicting way more bloodshed than you'd expect from the quote-unquote good faction. And as far as the canonicity of this ending goes, unless they built another Pridwen, there's absolutely no way the Railroad destroyed the Institute by themselves. They may well still be around in the canon, but they weren't the victors of the Wasteland. Speaking of non-canon endings, the same could be said for the Institute themselves, who will similarly have us wipe out every other faction in the Capital Wasteland save for the Minutemen to continue their underground science undisturbed. And just like with the Railroad, the first step towards obtaining this ending is to head to mass fusion alongside the Institute, not the Brotherhood, though the Brotherhood themselves won't be dealt with until the very end of this questline. Probably. In fact, we can take the approach of using the Railroad to destroy the Brotherhood again, and then easily take out the Railroad leaders at their HQ later. But honestly, this way of obtaining the ending is kind of underwhelming, and the airship down quest with the Institute is just way more fun and one of the most epic open area battles in the entire game. And I would highly recommend, if siding with the Institute, to use them throughout. But I'm getting ahead of myself, and there's a fair few things more to do for the Institute before heading out to annihilate the other factions. For starters, there's annihilating our own faction, the Minutemen, potentially, who are simply going about their noble job of defending Commonwealth citizens in the quest pinned, and getting in the Institute's way, trying to save someone that the Institute wants to recruit. It's perfectly possible to resolve this one peacefully, simply negotiating with the Minutemen troops whom we, lead, but then again, these particular guys can be annihilated if they won't stand down. An action you'd think would ostracize us from the Minutemen too, placing us all fall in with the Institute. Except it doesn't. It's pretty much impossible, in fact, to make Preston Garvey pissed off with us, and I guess Bethesda were afraid of making the game impossible to complete, thus leaving the Minutemen permanently allied no matter what. With this slight cop-out of a Minutemen loyalty test done though, it's back to the Institute to record a radio broadcast announcing our existence and our intentions. With Father, our son, soon to be dying, we will be the ones to inherit the Institute and get some say in how we want this to play out. And I figured, since the Institute is seen as the evil faction anyway, why not just lean into that?
For years now, you have suspected that the Institute still exists, that we are among you. It is true, but it is not the whole truth. We're here, and we are your new masters. Our superior technology represents the future of the Commonwealth. Today, we activate our nuclear reactor, ensuring that we will persevere long after the world above ground ceases to exist, ensuring that mankind has a future. We have no desire to interfere in the unimportant details of your pathetic existences. We simply insist that you do not interfere with Institute operations. To do so would result in your complete annihilation. Rest easy. Know that the future is out of your control, and that mankind will thrive under our guidance.
And so, with the ominous, threatening message now transmitting on repeat across the Commonwealth, there's only one thing left to do. Once again, eliminating the competition. The railroad is easy. We need simply betray them and kill the leaders inside their bunker. Just cut the head off the snake, as it were. The Brotherhood, on the other hand, is a lot more complex and fun. With their teleportation blocking technology, we instead have to infiltrate the ground base of Boston Airport, fight through the countless power-armored soldiers to disable the relays, and finally defend a synth as it hacks into Liberty Prime's weapon systems, reconfiguring the base of Chinese communists to read as the Pridwen. So with that done, we return to the Institute, just in time to witness our son's death. Though just like the other endings, we can replace him with Synth Sean and then kind of have something of a family in the end, living down in the Institute, which feels more like a setting from Starfield than Fallout. And that's it. With all the opposition wiped out and us now heading up the Institute and the Minutemen, all should be fairly peaceful-ish. And maybe, just maybe, the Institute might find a way, with all their technological advancements, to bring civilization of a sort back to the world. Or maybe they'll just make life more miserable for the current denizens of the wastelands. I mean, our companions certainly see it that way. Though, whilst Nick Valentine is highly disapproving of our actions, he still sticks around as a companion for some reason. Preston goes along with our decision, as always. X6 is the only one truly happy with what we're doing, eager to hunt down Brotherhood and Railroad remnants, and Piper, whilst reacting very shocked at first, will eventually publish a pro-Institute newspaper, saying that the motives of the Railroad and Brotherhood didn't actually favour the Commonwealth all that much, and that with us, the Vault Dweller, at the helm of the Institute, hopefully things will be okay now. Hopefully. How things really will be though, is something we can glean from Mama Murphy, who says this.
You're wearing a lab coat. You're standing with men of science, visionaries, brilliant but misunderstood. I see a land marked up, like a great experiment. Each test a new beginning, each sacrifice an acceptable loss. You will not be loved, but you will save humanity, however you choose to define it.
So, sounds like we'll sacrifice many of the people of today for hope of a better tomorrow. It's neither noble nor heroic, but maybe the citizens of the future will ultimately be thankful for it. Unless the Zatans have anything to say about that. As intriguing a prospect as an Institute-led future would ultimately be though, it's not canon by the looks. The Fallout TV show just decided the Brotherhood was way too cool not to keep around, and I absolutely agree. Which is why I'm placing the Brotherhood ending here. With ethics more questionable than anyone else bar the Institute, Brotherhood victory isn't the best thing for many residents of the Commonwealth. Synths, ghouls, anybody not resembling pre-war humanity will be annihilated eventually. But on the other hand, the Brotherhood and their ending is just so damn cool. The main important quest to progress with their ending then is Spoils of War, making sure to fly with them to the mass fusion building, fighting Institute synths on the way down, not Brotherhood soldiers, and obtaining the beryllium agitator to literally resurrect Liberty Prime, who's probably the coolest thing about the Brotherhood, alongside power armor, and is the reason I chose to side with them 9 years ago, when, you know, this game came out. Now, they make us do some questionable things, like immediately turning on Paladin Dance after learning he's a synth, though in fairness, not bending the rules for literally anyone, I suppose means everybody knows where they stand. And Elder Maxon can be convinced to let Dance live, though as much on our accounts as Dance's own. They also order the destruction of the railroad before the Institute, and whilst I said earlier that taking down the Brotherhood as the railroad seemed a little far-fetched and distracting from the Institute goal, flipping it around makes a little more sense. Dispatching the railroad leaders is a lot more straightforward, and given the Brotherhood's strict policy against synths, you can understand why, from their perspective, they don't want a synth-sympathizing underground network running rampant after they take down the synth manufacturing facility. I'm not saying the Brotherhood is doing the right thing here, it's just that this decision is more in line with how they operate. But the highlight of this ending, hell, the reason to choose it even, is the quest Ad Victoriam. It was a long time ago that I played Fallout 3 for the first time, and I distinctly remember a younger me being very upset when losing Liberty Prime. And I gotta tell you, marching once again through the wasteland whilst this ginormous symbol of democracy, American patriotism, and most important of all, anti-communism, it's, well, hilarious for starters, but also awesome. Liberty Prime is just a big reason to side with the Brotherhood, and we don't even have to lose him afterwards this time. He blows a huge hole into the Institute with laser eyes, and after that, the quest picks up much the same as the railroad. Only in this case, the assault comes fully from outside. And weirdly, the Brotherhood also seem okay with taking on a synth child when all's said and done. I mean, maybe not even they are cold enough to execute the boy. As for companions, their reaction here is more a relief at the destruction of the Institute rather than any comments on our siding with the Brotherhood itself. Even Paladin Dance, who now has a weird relationship with his brothers, is just happy to see the Institute gone. The only person who gets pretty angry here, in fact, is Virgil, who'll refuse to speak to us thereafter. I mean, that's if we can convince the Brotherhood to let us spare him in the first place. You'll also want to, of course, obtain Deacon and X6's affinity perks before betraying their respective factions. Overall, the Brotherhood ending is kind of a mirror of the railroad in that we destroy almost everyone else, locking us out of followers, quests, and areas. And I'm mostly basically ranking this higher thanks to Liberty Prime. Plus, with the existence of the Pridwen in the Amazon show, it's very possible this ending is the canon one, and part of me hopes that it is, since that could even open the door to seeing Liberty Prime in live action at some point, maybe for some future Brotherhood conflict. But whilst the Brotherhood definitely holds the title of coolest Fallout 4 ending, it's not really fair to call it the best overall. 2 other factions get destroyed, and with them huge chunks of the game. Not to mention the general morality of the Brotherhood of Steel can sometimes be questionable. Fortunately, there is one ending where the Brotherhood and the Railroad can both remain alive, with all their benefits and Radiant quests and companions remaining intact. Unfortunately, having the Minutemen save the Commonwealth isn't nearly as cool sounding. I mean, sure, logically, you should prefer a good-natured guy who's always saying this,
"How about the settlement problem? Another settlement needs our help. I'll mark it on your map."
to a robot that says this.
Destruction of any and all Chinese communists. Probability of Chinese victory impossible.
But in reality, that's simply not the case. In fact, the former is kind of hated, whereas the other is loved. Even still, the Minutemen ending does come with the pretty cool Defend the Castle quest, which, with a few strategically placed laser and missile turrets, is an utter walk in the park, but also a fun test of our design skills over combat skills. Though, to be honest, it mostly feels like a quest given to provide more open conflict before we jump straight to the nuclear option quest again, this time accessing the Institute via hidden service tunnels, but once inside, playing out literally the same as all the others. This is effectively the fail-safe ending to ensure that even if we piss everyone else off, we can still complete the game. But that's definitely not the way we want to do it, and certainly wouldn't make it the best ending. In that case, I say best loosely. Rather, there's a specific way to play this one, which maintains as many allies as possible. Firstly, we want to side with the Brotherhood during the Spoils of War quest. This cuts off the Institute and Railroad endings and starts the quest burning cover. Desdemona explains we'll need the Minutemen to destroy the Institute now, not them. We can continue with the Brotherhood quests to a point then, so long as we don't complete Tactical Thinking, the Destroy the Railroad quest. Instead, at this point, we want to turn our attention to the Minutemen, obtaining data from Proctor Ingram to complete the Inside Job quest, then building up the Minutemen strength. And so long as we don't complete more Brotherhood stuff, Preston will start the quest Defend the Castle, which then leads directly into the nuclear option. And when word gets around that the Institute was destroyed by the Minutemen, of all people, there is surprise. The Brotherhood are happy to see the Institute gone, but slightly concerned now at the Minutemen's firepower. But I think overall, our role in both is good enough to alleviate serious concerns. As for the Railroad, they're a lot more positive, merely wishing that they could have been present for events as well. And so, with just one faction wiped off the board, we're a lot more free to take our time with the likes of companion affinity quests and other side Radiant stuff. And X688 is the only one we need worry about beforehand in this case. It's also very feasibly a canon ending. The Brotherhood survive, and maybe because of us leading the Minutemen, they eventually feel comfortable migrating to the Mojave Wasteland. Though one add-in to the ending, which again definitively isn't canon, is that we can, just for fun, destroy the Brotherhood afterwards if we wish. If we, for whatever reason, become hostile with them, then we can speak to Preston and arrange to have the Pridwen destroyed by artillery fire. In fact, we can even do this on a save where we've already destroyed the Railroad too, suddenly turning the Minutemen from the friendliest major faction in the Commonwealth to the only one. So, if you want the biggest range of choice when it comes to siding with a faction, the Minutemen win on that front. And as somebody who likes to preserve as much content as possible when playing through games, that makes these guys my choice for my main save going forward into the rest of the game. As cool as the whole Liberty Prime choice, it's honestly though, that does make the whole thing a lot tougher. And I kind of wish that Bethesda had at least implemented an option to destroy the Minutemen too, because much as it feels like the most balanced, good ending of the game, if I hear Preston Garvey tell me one more time that another settlement needs our help, then I swear to God I will not rest until I have discovered a Destroy the Minutemen mod. But for the vanilla game, they are technically, annoyingly, the best ending, based purely on how much game we're left with afterwards. But as always, let me know in the comments if you agree, and which Fallout 4 ending is your favorite and why. And also tell me what other Fallout content you'd like to see, because I love this series and the Amazon show seems to have made it insanely popular again, so I'd love to explore more of the lore in future videos. For now though, thank you as always to the patrons for keeping the channel alive. You can find more on that in the description. Thank you for watching, I'm Sam Bram, and I'll see you in the next one.